So Sam needs no introduction to any of you, obviously. Sam has been the CEO of Beef and Lamb New Zealand for the last 8 years, and I'm sure you're all aware that he is leaving the organisation in about another month, I think, to take over as the CEO at Osprey. Yeah, Osprey. And Osprey is the organisation that runs Nate, TB Free, and these days M. Bovis as well, I think, Sam. So prior to coming to Beef and Lamb New Zealand, Sam has been in the industry pretty much all his working career. Started out as a farm consultant, worked for what was Meat and Wool New Zealand back in the day. I think his first CEO role was with Pork New Zealand, which was now infamous. Went through quite a difficult time while Sam was CEO. So Sam, welcome to the stage, and he's going to be setting the scene on what Beef and Lamb's doing and their new strategy. Thanks, Sam.
Good morning, everyone. Wherever I go, difficult times seem to follow me, and hopefully not into my next role as well. But one of the things that I do love is that I love a challenge, and that I love learning. But my task today is to give you an introduction to Beef and Lamb New Zealand's refresh strategy, and then finally look at the where does genetics fit into that, and where does genetics fit into the future. So I've entitled this Driving Profitability, Productivity and Sustainability into the Future. So in terms of where do we find ourselves as an industry, and I guess no news to you, we've sort of gone from the penthouse to the outhouse in a very short time as an industry. So in 21-22 we had our best financial year as a sheep and beef industry in about 40 odd years, and this year I don't need to tell you in the room that this will probably be the most challenging financial situation in 15 years, and that many farmers will make a loss this year. And what is that off the back of? You know it, sheep meat returns in particular, even though beef returns are good. Given that we're Beef and Lamb New Zealand, we don't really talk about wool, but that goes without saying. And then, off the back of that is that your cost structure has driven up massively over the last 3 years. If we look at inflation this year, it's sort of settling down a bit on farm at about 5%, but the year before it sat at 16.2%, and the year before that sat at 10%. And so, I don't have to tell you that you're feeling that in terms of your cost structure. But the key is that we can't look at this time as an isolated sort of time. The reality is if we look over time, our sheep and beef industry profitability has been under challenge for quite a while, and particularly around competition for land use. And so as Beef and Lamb New Zealand sat down and looked at our strategy, we've borne that in mind. And one of the things we've done is we've spent a lot of time sitting down and talking to farmers about it. And I guess there was a half a dozen very clear messages that came back from farmers. One is that they do want Beef and Lamb New Zealand to exist, and they want Beef and Lamb New Zealand to be successful. There was a very clear message that they wanted us to focus more on farm and helping farm productivity and profitability. A strong emphasis on that. They want Beef and Lamb New Zealand to continue to be a strong farmer voice and represent sheep and beef farmers. They want more connection with our business and with our people and community, and that's from extension right through to leadership of the organisation and directors. No news to you, telling your story so that actually urban communities, government, international influencers understand what you're doing and your commitment to the land, to your animals, and to your communities is really important. And the other thing is that you are focused on the future. You're absolutely going through tough times today, but you're interested in where is the future going, what are the opportunities that exist, and what are the risks that exist, and how can you prepare for those, and how can Beef and Lamb New Zealand prepare you for those. So taking all of that on board, we sat down as management and a board and said, well, where do we chart for the next 3 to 5 years? And absolutely, the decision was that we need to focus back behind the farm gate, because, you know, if you look at where we've been over the last 4 or 5 years, probably our productivity is stagnated a bit. And actually, any business needs to be driving sort of increases in productivity at about 3% a year, and we have sort of stagnated as an industry. So it's time for us to take the next leap in that. And so what we've done is we've examined actually how can we support farmers to do that. And what we describe it is supporting farming excellence. And really that is 2 aspects: research and innovation to solve the big problems that farmers have in terms of driving productivity, and then making sure that, that we support farmers to uptake, whether it's new technologies, new farming systems, or actually incremental improvement of their existing farm systems. And I guess, you know, the classic example is, as we look at our lambing percentage, is that year after year now, we know that our industry nails about 130% lambing, regardless of challenging climatic conditions. We seem to be able to nail that. But how do we take the next leap in terms of achieving 150% lambing? Because that's sort of where we need to be from a performance and a financial perspective. And so, sorry, I've leapt ahead in terms of my slides. Let me just go back one. So where did we get to in terms of vision and strategy? Well, what we've done is we've really, I suppose, put a laser focus around our vision. For those of you that read these sort of documents, our old vision was, George, you can probably tell me what it was, but it was profitable farmer, thriving rural communities valued by all New Zealanders. And you'll see here there is quite a deliberate sharpening of the focus, right? And that is really around thriving sheep and beef farmers into the future. And so you'll see it's a much more focus on productivity and profitability. And one of the outcomes of that is that if you're profitable sheep and beef farmers, then you will have thriving communities, right? Because of what you're able to do in your communities, what you contribute to your communities as well. And so we've got three priorities there. The first is championing farming excellence, so on-farm extension, and secondly, research investment, or research and innovation. Secondly, advocacy, championing your farmers' stories and shaping the future both domestically and internationally, and I'll dive into that in a minute. And then the last one is really around energising the sector, leading, building trust, reputation and confidence, and proudly talking about the success of our industry. And sorry, this was a slide that I leapt onto, is that what we believe is that there is a tremendous opportunity to drive that productivity behind the farm gate. And the way that we intend to do that is to lift our research and innovation investment, and you'll sort of see the graph lifting up there. But the key thing is that actually we know there is a lot of good information out there. We know what top farmers are doing and how they're performing, and so how can we move the whole industry up? And our philosophy is that we can do a lot more with working with farmers in the extension space. And so we're going to lift our investment and resourcing in that. Just to give you a picture of how we intend to do that, there is two things. One is that there is opportunities for incremental improvement, right? So that is just doing the 3% year on year that we need to do. But also there is the challenge that we need to find those stepwise opportunities for the sector over the next 3 to 5 years. And I talked about that example of lifting our average lambing percent from 130 to 150. Aspirational maybe, but actually what is the stretch that we need to achieve? And so there is the key change that we're going to be making in our business. We're still going to be doing the stuff that's going to be around raising awareness of opportunities and issues, growing knowledge in the community that gives farmers confidence to change. But what we do know is that where farmers work together around individual farms with good information, where they work in small groups together with access to expertise and to facilitation, then we see dramatic change happens on farm and in community. And I guess we hark back to work that was done through the Red Meat Profit Partnership, where there was a big investment in action groups. And the cost-benefit analysis that we did after that showed about a 24-to-1 return, and that was really around farmers working together to solve problems or take on challenges and help each other through them with the help of expertise. And so, dare I say it, this is going to be, some of it's going to be back to the old days to a certain extent in terms of focus farms and the ability to have a farm that's relevant to your region, addressing the issues that are important to you, trying to find that stepwise change, but then also groups that are trying to solve specific issues that you want to deal with in your community. So whether it's around parasite resistance, whether it's around lifting the lambing percentage, whether it's around hogget mating, whether it's around ewe wastage, whatever it is, where you see an opportunity in your community to make a real difference and you want to work together, then we are going to get behind you and we're going to fund you as a group to do that. But one of the obligations will be that information goes out to the wider community so that all others can learn from what you're doing as well. So where are we at in this process? Justine Kidd, who some of you might know, is the GM of Extension, and so Justine over the last year has been working up a plan around this. The board has signed off on it and we're starting to implement that now, firstly through the process we went through with our local farmer councils around developing our regional delivery plans, but secondly we're starting to put people in place in terms of, dare I say it, a higher stocking rate in the community around extension. And that is about the fact that that we want to have more control over what we're doing and closer connection with farmers. And so we'll see that we're actually starting to recruit now, and by the time we hit the end of this next financial year, it'll be fully operating. And so then on to research and extension, and I think, Susie, you're going to dig a bit deeper into some of the detail. Short, are you? Because I'm taking too long, right. So in terms of research and innovation, I guess we've been rebuilding this pipeline over the last 3 or 4 years, and I think when we last came to you for a levy raise from you as farmers, that was one of the things that we committed to do. So we now have a big investment program in facial eczema. We're now building a program in internal parasites. We have the Informing New Zealand Beef investment, and of course a significant investment in Sheep Improvement Limited, or sheep genetics as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, well, we're going to talk a lot about genetics over this next hour or so I'm not going to dwell on that a lot. But two key things is what is happening with our farming systems and how do we make them fit for the future, and secondly, what are those challenges in terms of whether it's market related, whether it's policy related, around climate change, and how do we support farmers to address those. So in terms of where we're at with farming excellence at the moment, as I said, we're one of the things that we are working on is what are these stepwise changes that we actually want to make? Where are those opportunities? How do we go about catalysing those in the sector? And are there some technologies out there that are game changers? And if so, what is Beef and Lamb New Zealand's role in that? Ours is not a technology developer, but is it something that we can play an independent role in helping farmers to uptake that? The other thing that we hear repeatedly is there is all this research sitting on the shelf that we're actually not utilising as an industry. So as part of that strategy, we're going to be investing in. Once we've identified what are those key changes or stepwise changes we need to make as a sector, what is the research that's already been done to actually support that we can pull off the shelf and adapt for use in the sector as well. So one of the things I'll talk about in a moment is that we're doing a lot of work around how we structure our genetics part of our operation for the future. If we look at our productivity in the sheep industry over the last 20 odd years, and it's a great story, about half of that is probably down, we've measured about half of that is down to genetics. And new people in this room obviously know that, but as we take our next leap forward, genetics is going to play a massively important part in that as well. So working on how do we get the right sizing in our genetics business fit for the future. And then on the other aspects of research and innovation is, how do we design great projects that'll be game changers, and then how do we coalesce people and other organisations around it, both to leverage funds and expertise. And I guess a really good example of that is the facial eczema program, which we have 13 partners in that, Susie, all of which, along with government, that are contributing money into that. And why is that? It's because the team built a great and compelling and well-designed project that people were willing to sign on to. A bit on advocacy. We're changing what we do and how we do it. And one of the key things is that we've had a pretty shotgun approach to advocacy over the last 4 or 5 years. So every time farmers have said, hey, actually, we need you to try and deal with this, we've tried to deal with it. But again, what we're trying to do is bring a laser focus to our advocacy, which is to say, what are the most important policy or regulatory related issues that are going to affect the productivity and profitability of your sheep and beef business, right? So that is a little bit different from where we've been in the past, where actually we've been trying to solve things for your land business or your farming business. Our focus is going to be on how do we make sheep and beef farming successful and profitable in the future. So it's actually allows you to choose that as the future for your land use, and therefore what are the key policy issues that are going to affect your bottom line. So for each issue that comes across our plate, we're running that ruler across it. What is the impact of this going to be on the bottom line of your sheep and beef farming business? And I guess the other key thing here too is actually just making sure that our engagement with farmers is top notch. Take it on the chin. We all talk about the failure of He Waka Kanoa. There are some successes with He Waka Kanoa in that nobody is paying a tax on their methane yet, but one of the things that absolutely was a failure there is the way that we're able to engage and discuss the issues with farmer, and we don't want to see a repeat of that in anything that we do in the policy area in the future. So I'm just struggling to read my paper here, it's in small print. Oh, so if we talk about the other advocacy area, which I think is going to continue to be really challenging, is where do we go with animal welfare? And there's quite a tension here in that, if I look into the future, one of the challenges that I see is that within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have that real challenge put in front of us is, do we have the social licence to farm animals for food? Seems to be a little bit out there, but I think that's one of the challenges that we will face. And so here we've got this tension between how do we lead on animal welfare and prepare for the future, but actually how do we absolutely not encourage regulation that is going to affect your farming business. So there's a really real tension there that we need to just be honest about, that we're grappling with in Beef and Lamb New Zealand, which is that advocacy versus leadership, because we know it's going to be an issue in the future. On the trade side, the game is changing internationally. After the EU FTA, I think we've got something like 87% of our markets are covered by FTAs now. The world is changing in terms of liberalisation of trade. The WTO is under pressure. Obviously a big focus on India and UAE at the moment in terms of opportunities there. But really one of the big focuses of the next sort of 5 to 10 years will be protecting what we have and removing non-tariff barriers. because what often happens is after you get a free trade agreement, there's a whole lot of other barriers that importing countries put in the way to stop you sending product there. And we've still got about, I think it is $800 million worth of non-tariff barriers that are sitting out there. So that's a really important thing for us to focus on. And the other one too is that there are a heap of international discussions happening at the moment that impact how we farm in New Zealand. And a couple of classic ones is obviously climate change and COP, and some of the decisions and the policy decisions that have been made there, actually they filter back down to affect you and your farm business in New Zealand. Another one would be the role of animal foods in the diet, or animal foods in nutrition. Many discussions being had about that internationally that will impact the way that you farm. Another example, the EU is putting in place deforestation regulations at the moment. Again, that has the potential to affect your beef access into the EU. So more and more we're entering into these international discussions to influence those, and GWP Star and our influence in getting GWP Star recognised amongst industries around the world has been a good example of the fact that New Zealand, if we choose to invest in the right place and have the right conversations with the right people, we can influence international policy for our good. The last one, how am I going for time, Chair? Good, perfect. Sorry, I'm always a slide behind. The next one is energising the sector. And so one of the things that you've told us repeatedly, and I accept this as a criticism of the organisation, is that we haven't told your farmer story well enough. And so tomorrow at our board meeting, we're presenting a strategy for how we do that and putting the investment behind that. Obviously, one of the key partnerships that we have is we are funders of Beef and Lamb Inc., which is the domestic marketing organisation jointly with processors and retailers. And a significant part of the investment that we put in there is about growing not only consumption but trust and the reputation of the sector as well. But what we're going to be doing is, alongside that, we're going to be investing directly as Beef and Lamb New Zealand to up that story as well. The second thing is celebrating success. We are a successful industry. We are really good at what we do. We are recognised for what we do internationally. And one of the really important things that we do is that we take encouragement from celebrating success in our sector and recognising it, because it's the success of others that really inspires us in terms of what we do ourselves. And so, we obviously have the Beef and Lamb New Zealand Awards. We're involved in the Balanced Farm Environment Awards, and so it's recognising that success that also underpins our storytelling as well. And then the third aspect is around scanning or preparing for the future. And this is the aspect that you asked us to do as farmers is, you are invested in being here in the future. What does the future look like? What are the opportunities? What are the risks? How do you prepare as individuals? And so what is the insight and intelligence that we can give you? But also, how do we prepare as an organisation so that we can actually support you as you go into the future? So that insight or future-looking work is about us being in the right place as an organisation as well. And so one of the questions about changing our investment, and we are putting a significant more investment into extension and on-farm work, is how we're going to do that while living within our means as an organisation. You all know the stats about the sheep industry and sheep numbers. That directly affects our levy intake, particularly around sheep, and though our beef income is stable. The board has made the decision to utilise some of the reserves, making sure that we've still got the critical amount that we need to have. But the conclusion from that is you as farmers don't pay us levies to build up reserves. You actually pay us levies to make an impact on your behalf. And so that's a real focus, is to make sure that we utilise the reserves that we have wisely, but also that we're more effective and efficient as a business. And so one of the areas that is changing in terms of investment is taste, pure nature. So I don't know how many of you have caught up with the announcement that has been made over the last week or so I guess when we built Taste Pure Nature, it was in partnership with you and processors or exporters, and the decision that we've been working to over time is that they are the people that own the product and sell the product, and so they're the natural people that should be driving Taste Pure Nature. And so we've been under discussion with the processors probably for the last 18 months or so around what that might look like and how we might do that. And so we now have an agreement with processors that the MIA will take over the leadership of Taste Pure Nature, and that will happen on the 1st of October this year. Beef and Lamb New Zealand's committed $2 million into it for the next 3 years, as have processors as well, and every processor has committed to put funding into that, which is a pretty unique aspect that MIA has pulled off. We'll continue to own the brand as Beef and Lamb New Zealand because we do, it is a brand that is owned by you as farmers. You've invested in it, but we also want to be able to use those assets in the way that we see fit, particularly in New Zealand around storytelling as well. We have a program of investment that will continue up to the end of September. And the key focus that processors want to focus on is really in China and direct to consumer there. There will be a board set up with an independent chair, and Beef and Lamb New Zealand will have a seat on that chair. We'll have a seat on that board, and we're just working through the process of an MOU between us and the MIA around how that relationship will work in the future, from where we're moving from a leadership role to a supporting role for processors. And the other aspect that we're looking at is we're going through a process to look at how we can leverage government funding and partnership into that. And so what that'll do is that means, yes, we will be investing less in the market development area, but it is actually going to go back to the on-farm research and innovation and extension. So lastly, on to a bit of an overview, I guess, from my perspective on genetics and where genetics is going. I have a pretty simple formula that sticks in my head about research and extension, and that is production equals genetics plus feeding plus animal health and welfare. And so if you get that formula right, then you can drive high production, high productivity in your business. And I guess I alluded to the point that genetics is massively important in that, and has probably delivered 50% of our gains over the last 20 or 30 years as a sheep industry. It's actually really interesting when you contrast the beef industry. When we benchmark it, the beef industry has achieved nowhere near the same, genetic gain. We're up here, the dairy industry is about here, and then the beef industry is down here. And it's an interesting analysis. When you look at the average live weight of our beef cows, I think they've been increasing at 5 kgs live weight, or is it 10 kgs? Live weight per 5 kgs per year live weight gain, and we've got no further weaning weight weaned out of those cows during that time. And so we're talking about sheep today, but obviously beef genetics and how we drive the best opportunities for genetic performance, and that is a focus for us. So what's our vision with Beef and Lamb New Zealand genetics? Is profitable genetic gain for the New Zealand sheep and beef industry. And what really is Beef and Lamb New Zealand's role? It's to provide the genetic information, infrastructure, along with developing and promoting breeding objectives that positively impact sheep and beef farmers' bottom lines. And you'll dwell a lot on, or you'll know a lot about what we're doing today, so I won't dwell on that, but we have our progeny tests. We've got Improve and the New Zealand Genetic Engine, underpinned by research and development, and technology transfer is a massive part of that as well. And so in terms of how we're be more effective in our genetics business, we've been looking at how is that fit for the future. And so Dan and the team, Dan Bryan and the team, who's the GM for Farming Excellence, has been going through a process of just looking at how do we build a genetics team and structure that's fit for the future. And I guess there was a few aims as we looked at that. Firstly was around how do we make sure we've got the right decision making and accountability in terms of our genetics business. Secondly, how do we manage key person risk? Good geneticists and good people that work in genetics are fairly rare around the world, and if we want to continue to lead globally, particularly in our sheep genetics business, then we need good people and we need to retain them. We need to make sure that we're right-loading staff as well. One of the things I'm sure it's the same in your business, but we've got passionate and purpose-driven people in our business, and one of the issues is that often our people can take on too much, and so there's a risk to actually burnout and how we look after our people over time. So a real focus on that. With an eye to the future. So if genetics is so massively important, how do we make sure that we build the right technology, the right structure and the right people that are going to keep us in the lead in the future? And then the last thing is really on filling gaps in delivery, because there's some areas where we said actually we don't think we're getting it right. So in terms of the key structural changes, Jason Archer is going to take on, or has actually, you have taken it on, haven't you? Have you said yes? Yeah. Is taking on the role of lead in terms of the genetics business. We're putting a science lead in behind that, because actually underpinning science that is ahead of the game and delivers for the future is really important to us. And I think this is feedback that's come consistently from you, I think, as farmers as well, or as breeders as well, is that actually we have the information there, we have the genetics there. Actually, it's about how do we get that uptake and acceleration and its use in the industry to take the next step. For those of you that are more visual sort of characters, there's a structural diagram that you can just take in, but I'm sure there'll be a copy of that hanging around somewhere for those of you who want to read it. So I guess what are the key takeaways that I leave with you is that as a business we're putting a laser-like focus on farm productivity and profitability. Whoops, there's two productivities in there, it should be profitability. Key role for Beef and Lamb New Zealand is both catalysing, so getting it going and facilitating that stepwise change that we need as a sector. And there is no doubt in my mind that genetics is at the heart of that. Remember that formula, genetics plus feeding plus animal health and welfare. Genetics sets the foundation for what we can do. And lastly, that it's a team approach. So you as breeders, Beef and Lamb New Zealand obviously has a key role in that, but there's a whole lot of other people out there that influence farmer decision making and how well those genetics work on farms. So working with support services and with influences of farmers' decision making as well. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning. I'm going to be here till the middle of the afternoon, so really happy to sit down and talk with anyone about further detail.
So thanks very much, Sam. So we do have 10 minutes now for questions for Sam. So you're all a bit slow on Slido. So now's the time. You need to get this out and type your question in. If anyone's got one on anything Sam's spoken about. One thing I just wanted to say to Sam was congratulate him and the board on the transition of Taste Pure Nature to MIA. Having sat around that board table for a long time, to get MIA to commit to $2 million funding for 3 years is no mean feat. So I think they should get a round of applause for that. So is there any questions out there for Sam on anything that Beef and Lamb are doing, their new strategy, anything in the genetics world, or anything he might be addressing in his new role?
Yeah, traceability will be really important. Absolutely critical that you continue to fund that. Ben, where's Ben? Oh, Ben, can you just explain that a little bit more in terms of your question?
Yeah, sure. So your work, Beef and Lamb New Zealand, is focused pretty much on farm.
Yes.
Productivity on farm. Your work on Beef and Lamb genetics, that's talking about on-farm productivity. At some stage you have to sell something to people, and they've got to actually buy it and use it. So I wondered where where the customer came in that thinking around some of the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the signals from the customer are massively important, right? So in terms of some of the, Jason can probably answer this question, or some of the team better than I, but in terms of where we focus in genetics, there is obviously a productivity bit to it, but there is an eye to what is the customer asking for, and what can Beef and Lamb New Zealand do to support farmers as they meet the customer. In terms of how it influences our business, Ben, we're not going to move away from gathering consumer intelligence, so to speak. And so, you know, I talked about that work of looking into the future and seeing what the markets are doing and where trends are going. Part of that is understanding what are the consumer trends, and often the gatekeeper of the consumer, actually, because if you look at a lot of the decisions today, they're being made by bigger organisations that service the consumer, right? Whether it's the Nestle's of this world, those sort of companies that are the gatekeepers. So we'll be continuing to gather intelligence from them, scanning internationally for political change, because political change makes a difference as well. Also scanning for what are those challenges that are coming through in market access. And so, you know, one of the big things that we are seeing now is that sustainability is coming into trade access issues. And so what does that mean in terms of what we do in our business, but what does it mean also in terms of what we do in our genetics business? Do you want to, you've got the mic, Jason.
Yeah, is this working? Yep. I'll add just a little bit of granularity. Totally agree with what Sam says. In terms of sort of the end user delivery, you know, we do things, and we'll hear later today about producing tools to improve meat quality, and that's not new or revolutionary, but that's happening. And then there's the health and the welfare type traits, which to Sam's point, and the sustainability traits too, which to Sam's point are market access, social licence, as well as productivity traits. So on the ground, yeah, I think we have an eye on the consumer, but yeah, fundamentally it's about on-farm, what we can do on-farm in terms of genetics, so how that fits in.
Cool. So next question, sorry, and I didn't cover this. What is the MAG Kāhui? So Māori agribusiness. So in terms of what Beef and Lamb New Zealand has done over the last probably 3 years, boil it down, Māori farmers supply somewhere between 15 and 20% of our levies, and one of the unique things, you've got private Māori farmers, you've got I guess the iwi organisations, but one of the unique things is the ownership structure of Māori farming, and that is quite different in terms of how they make decisions, who makes decisions, where they get their information from, how they take their information, and so we're putting a focus on how we better deliver to Māori farmers, just like we are too putting a focus on, you know, the fact that dairy farmers pay about 15% of our beef levies. So how do we make sure that we're providing value to dairy levy payers as well? And so the Kāhui is really a group of Māori leaders that are helping us from two angles, making sure that we've got the right connection and delivery to Māori farming businesses, but secondly, making sure that when we have these policy discussions that we actually get a Māori view as well. I think we might have, these are all, it keeps on moving, as people vote. Stop voting for a minute, and then I can just answer a couple of questions.
So I'll read one out here, Sam. What systems or techniques is Beef and Lamb planning on using to improve interactions between beef and lamb and farmers?
Yep. So let's look at a couple of areas on that. I'll pick on extension, and I'll pick on policy as well. The key thing around the policy space is that we had an independent review done by Nicola Shadbolt, which would have been probably middle of last year or end of last year actually, which identified what is best practice and engagement with farmers and input from farmers around policy and influence. And so part of that is that actually, you know what, We just actually need to spend more time talking to farmers, more time face-to-face, providing better information so that when we do have discussions, everybody's equipped with the right information, and making sure that actually farmers know that we've heard what they've said, and actually our voice and the way that we take their issues forward reflect them as well. The second area, in terms of extension, obviously our Farmer Council is a key part of helping to drive our extension, and that is people in the community that help us to identify needs, design programs that'll make a difference, and then it's for us to make sure that we put the expertise and the right process and the right tools behind that. The other aspect is that of just more farmers involved in what we're doing. And so whether that's through workshops, through field days, through these small focus groups, through farmers in the community being around focus farms, absolutely providing as many options for farmers as possible to have a touch point with the organisation. And so we know that also digital tools and those sort of things are increasingly important as well. And so thinking about how do farmers pick up information, how do they make decisions, and making sure that they have a connection point somewhere with Beef and Lamb New Zealand for all of those.
And there it is, that little red flag. So this one from Jane: given your supposed focus on productivity and profitability, how do you value a political trait like methane in terms of economic return, EBV, given that selecting for this has been estimated to decrease productivity trait gains by circa 15%?
Try to give this to the technical man to answer.
Thanks, Sam. I guess I'll briefly make some comments when I talk later on. I don't believe that methane will be a political trade in the future. I think it's going to be a market access trade. I'll just leave it at that.
Another aspect that I would point to is that methane is a waste product out of the system, right? And if you're emitting methane, then it's something that's not going into production. In terms of the debate around, does it reduce productivity? Absolutely. With any trait you select, you've got to understand the upsides and the downsides to that, and the influence it has on your other objectives. So for me, the starting point is being very clear on what your objectives are, what you're trying to achieve with as a breeder or a commercial farmer, and then you build your trait selection program around that. So it may involve methane or it may not, but that's an individual decision to make around how you drive your business forward.
And one last one before we finish off Sam's session, and I think quite clearly this is probably the most dominant thing out there in the farming community, definitely in my community. On the East Coast, parasite resistance is a huge factor. So do we need to rethink parasite resistance and look into parasite resilience, not limit our animal health and productivity in your research?
I probably won't draw a conclusion on whether it should be around resistance or resilience, but I guess what we do know is that it is a massive issue in our industry. And so whether it's at the extremes of triple drench resistance, whether it is actually people not knowing what their status is, whether it's using the wrong drenches or not using drenches when they need to, it is a complex area. But in my view, and I think the analysis backs it up, it is a significant cost economically to our industry. And so that, along with facial eczema, are the two biggies that we're focused on in the animal health and welfare sector. So at the moment, the team is designing just how we go about that. Obviously, we have the Wormwise program, which we've upped the resource in that significantly over the last few years. So that is about making sure that farmers have available to them the existing knowledge and tools. But the second thing is how do we develop the new knowledge and new tools for the future? And part of that is that the team is really focusing hard on growing international relationships with that, because there are many other countries globally that have the same issues as us and wanting to address it. And so how we leverage both that expertise and that funding in to help solve our problems is a massive focus for the business.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.